Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My parents worked for the government, and their jobs meant we never stayed anywhere long. By the time I reached 8th grade, I'd been through enough schools to know how to keep my head down and survive. Private schools wouldn't take midterm admissions, so I ended up in Central School. The education was rough, but I managed. Then I decided to try for a boarding school, one of the top schools in the country. The entrance exam had two parts: written test in the morning, interview in the evening. While waiting for the interview, my family ran into another family from our hometown. Their daughter was also applying. She acted like she knew everything, answering questions nobody asked, showing off constantly. My parents immediately started comparing me to her, how she was so confident, how she spoke such good English, how I should learn from her. The pressure was already crushing me, and this just made it worse. She went for her interview first and came out looking upset. She complained about only getting 9 out of 10 questions right and how badly she'd messed up. I went in next and answered maybe 5 questions. Still got selected. Turned out it was more about personality than knowledge. The written test had already covered academics, but that didn't stop my family from their commentary the entire time until school started. They kept saying I just got lucky and that I wouldn't survive there because the school was full of smart girls like her. When I finally moved into the hostel, reality hit hard. The school enforced strict English-speaking rules, and my English was terrible. I'd studied in government schools where nobody cared about proper language. Once, a teacher asked why I hadn't done my homework. I told her I was absent tomorrow. The class laughed. I felt my face burn. This was also my first time away from home, and I got homesick constantly. The hostel food tasted like cardboard compared to home cooking. Weekly tests added more stress. Within 3 months, everyone thought I was dumb, shy, and clueless. Only my hostel mates knew the real me. Then she showed up, the girl from the interview. She'd gotten in too, and she decided I was her target. Whenever I was alone, she found me. She called me ugly and fat. She asked how someone like me even got into the school. I kept quiet. I knew what happened when my temper snapped. I'd worked hard to control it. She escalated. She started using curse words and calling me an idiot. She said everyone knew I was stupid and didn't belong there. I still didn't react. I'd heard worse at my old school, but I was curious why she hated me so much. Through my roommate, I found out. During the written exam, she tried to cheat off me. I covered my paper. She blamed me for almost not getting in. Now that she was admitted and everyone thought I was stupid, she could do whatever she wanted. I endured it through 9th grade. I was about to confront her when she started dating my best friend and roommate. Bro code meant I had to back off, but he told me everything. He explained that she'd been spreading rumors about me. She told everyone I got expelled from my last school for failing. She claimed my dad bribed the administration to get me in. She said I smoked and beat up other kids. I asked him if he was serious. He confirmed it all. She was making herself look like some hero standing up to a bully. I'd actually scored 93% in my previous grade. My father had to take a loan for my fees. I'd never touched a cigarette. The only true part was that I'd fought back when people messed with me at my old school. But her lies made her popular among the girls. She was protecting them from me, or so they thought. I endured another year of insults. She commented on my body, my family, everything. Then came 10th grade and board exams, the most important test for Indian students. She broke up with my roommate. She told him he didn't give her enough time. He ended up scoring 98.4%, perfect hundreds in 3 subjects. At least I had my ally back. In 11th grade, she hooked up with another guy from my class. Around then, I started using Facebook. It was new and everyone was joining. She commented insults on every photo I posted. Her boyfriend liked every comment. I tried responding once with something passive-aggressive. Big mistake. They came to confront me while I was having a snack. Surrounded by my hostel mates, they backed off. Later, they stole my assignment. I rarely did assignments anyway, so it didn't matter. Looking back now, I'm amazed I held back that long. But then came the incident that broke me. A new girl joined our class. I befriended her. Maybe I liked her a bit, but somehow the antagonist sensed it and started bad-mouthing me to her. Something inside me snapped. I wanted revenge. Real revenge. I gathered information. My roommate helped after his recent breakup. Her ex-boyfriend helped too. The summary was clear. She'd had a new boyfriend every year since 7th grade. Our school was prestigious. For annual day functions, they invited important guests. In 12th grade, the chief guest was the state governor, and that year she turned 18 right before annual day. I started preparing. I bought a mosquito coil and saved a huge firecracker from Diwali. For 2,000 rupees, I got a 50-gram pack of marijuana. I spied on her until I learned she planned to meet her new boyfriend in the girls' room during the function when everyone would be busy. I experimented with the mosquito coil and figured out that 3 inches burned for half an hour. On annual day, I set up 12 inches of coil with the firecracker in the girls' room, 2 hours before their meeting. I gave the marijuana pack to my roommate. He slipped it into her school bag right when she left for the auditorium. The governor was giving his speech when a blast echoed through the building. Prefects ran toward the sound. They found her in the girls' room with her boyfriend. She tried to dismiss it, saying she'd come to check on the blast. The prefects insisted on checking her bag. She agreed, looking confident. By then, the governor's security had arrived. The principal came too, probably trying to look competent. And there, in front of everyone, they pulled out the marijuana from a 12th grade student's bag. The school couldn't hide something this big. She was arrested on the spot. Her 92.4% in boards meant nothing. Her expected rank of 15 in engineering entrance exams meant nothing. That was 9 years ago. I went to a good engineering college and landed a great job. Never heard about her again. I'd moved to this neighborhood about 6 months before everything went down. After years of scraping by in a sketchy part of town, I finally caught a break with some inheritance money and bought a small house outright. The place was perfect because the homeowners association was completely optional. I made sure of that before signing anything. The last thing I wanted was someone telling me what color I could paint my front door. I own 2 cars. My daily driver is a 2004 Camry that gets me to work and back without any fuss. The other is a 1999 F-150 that I picked up around the same time as the house. Nothing fancy, just a reliable work truck for hauling furniture and pulling the trailer when I moved in. Sure, it's older, but I keep it maintained. Both vehicles get washed regularly, and the truck runs like a dream despite its age. The trouble started almost immediately. This retired guy who ran the HOA kept showing up at my door trying to get me to join. At first, I was polite about declining. Then the applications started arriving in my mailbox. Every week, another packet of paperwork I didn't ask for. He kept insisting I should reconsider joining and that everyone in the neighborhood was part of the association. I told him I appreciated the offer but wasn't interested, and that the optional part of optional HOA was why I bought here. This went on for weeks until I finally lost my patience and told him to shove his membership applications where the sun doesn't shine. That's when things got nasty. A few days later, I started getting fines in the mail. $50 for this, $75 for that. Every notice claimed I was a member of the association and owed money for various violations. My truck was supposedly an eyesore. My grass was too long by half an inch. Complete garbage. I showed up at the next HOA meeting with a folder full of their bogus fines. I told them I was there to dispute the charges because I wasn't a member of their association, so they had no authority to fine me. The president argued that by living in the neighborhood, I was automatically a member whether I signed up or not. I laughed and told them that wasn't how optional memberships worked. Then I pulled out an envelope and handed it to the board. Inside was a cease and desist letter my lawyer had drafted. The president's face went red when he skimmed through it, and then he furiously ordered me to get out of the meeting. The fines stopped for a while. I thought maybe they'd gotten the message, but 3 months later they started up again. Random charges appearing in my mailbox like clockwork. I crashed another HOA meeting and made myself crystal clear. I told them this was harassment, that I wasn't in their association, and if the fines didn't stop permanently, I was taking them to court. The president just yelled at me to get out again. After that, the fines finally stopped, but I could tell the president wasn't done with me. The way he glared at me in his yard when I drove past told me he was planning something. It happened on a random afternoon. I came home from work and my truck was gone. Just an empty spot in my driveway where it had been parked that morning. My first thought was theft, so I immediately pulled up my security camera footage. What I saw made my blood boil. The HOA president had walked right onto my property around noon. He took out a pocket knife and methodically stabbed each of my truck's tires in the sidewalls. Then he unscrewed my license plates, put them in a bag, and walked away like he'd just finished mowing his lawn. An hour later, a tow truck showed up and hauled my disabled truck away. I called the police immediately and showed them the footage. They traced the tow truck to a local junkyard, not an impound lot. The officer in charge told me this was Grand Theft Auto, not a civil matter. We headed to the junkyard together. When we arrived, I saw something unbelievable. My truck was up on a lift, and 4 guys were actively taking it apart. The hood was off, the bumper was gone, both headlights had been removed, and the entire front end was stripped down to bare metal. The catalytic converters had been cut out completely, and there were disconnected hoses and wires hanging everywhere. The HOA president was standing right there watching them work. When he saw me with the police, his face went white. I completely lost it and started yelling about what he'd done to my truck. He tried to defend himself by saying it was an eyesore and looked abandoned, so he had it towed. I shot back that he'd stolen it off my private property and that his HOA had zero authority over my land. Then I told him my cameras had caught everything he did. His expression changed from shocked to furious in seconds. He started stomping toward me, yelling about how my truck had been ruining the neighborhood and he was justified in getting rid of it. The officers stepped between us and within seconds, he was in handcuffs. The junkyard owner turned out to be the HOA president's cousin. He ran the towing service the HOA used and claimed he'd had no idea I wasn't a member. He also insisted he didn't know his cousin had ordered the truck torn apart for parts. The police officer ordered him to reassemble the vehicle completely. I added that it better be good or better than it was before, or my lawyer would be in touch. The junkyard owner told his employees to do whatever it took to fix this and that he didn't care how long it took. He also mentioned he'd be billing his cousin for every penny. I watched those 4 employees spend the rest of the day putting my truck back together. They kept muttering and shooting me dirty looks, probably because they've been counting on getting paid under the table for the quick disassembly job. When they fired up the engine hours later, it was obviously misfiring. They tried to claim it was fine, but the police backed me up that something was wrong. Turned out they destroyed a coil pack during the teardown. They had to order replacement parts from a nearby auto parts store. Then one headlight wouldn't turn on. More broken parts they'd have to replace. The coolant lines had been cut instead of properly disconnected. More parts ordered. All 4 tires needed replacing because of the sidewall stab wounds. The mechanics worked until nearly midnight, then had to finish the next day because they were waiting on parts and new tires. I couldn't even take my truck home until the second evening. By the time they were done, the owner looked exhausted and the employees looked like they wanted to murder me. But the truck ran smoother than it had before. Free tune-up, I guess. I sued the HOA president for trespassing, theft, destruction of property, and illegal towing. He paid his cousin for all the repairs, lost his position, and moved out of the neighborhood within a month after the lawsuit. With everything on camera, he didn't even try to fight it. He just accepted the settlement and left. The HOA hasn't contacted me once since then. My neighbors actually thank me when they see me outside. The old president had been power tripping on everyone for years, issuing constant fines over nothing and making everyone's lives miserable. I did go back to that junkyard once. My Camry needed a new grille, and they had a great selection of parts. The employees recognized me immediately and gave me the coldest stares I've ever received. But they left me alone while I pulled the part I needed. I paid and left without any trouble. I grew up splitting time between my mom's place and my grandmother's house. My grandmother lived closer to the high school, so during the school year I stayed with her most of the time. My mom was working on building her business from home back then, doing search engine optimization work for different companies. She's pretty successful now, but during those years she was still getting everything started. The neighborhood where my grandmother lived was perfect for someone like me. There were 10 kids, total spread across 7 houses, including 3 sets of siblings. We all played video games together, swapped tips about how to beat certain levels, and generally had a good time. Not everyone could afford the same number of games though. I was lucky enough to have the biggest collection on the street, so I made it clear to everyone that they could come over and play whatever they wanted at my house. The thing is, I have some pretty severe issues that make me obsessive about keeping track of my stuff. I maintain spreadsheets for everything I own. Every game gets logged with whether I bought it new or used, how much I paid, and the date I got it. This might seem extreme, but I had learned the hard way in elementary school that people would take advantage of me. Kids had stolen from me before, and my grandmother had to step in and help me deal with it. After that experience, I got serious about protecting my things. When I started high school, I came up with a system. I would take a pen and make a small mark on the inside of the game cover, the white part that nobody ever sees when the game is on the shelf. Then I would write down that exact mark in a notebook along with the game's title, whether it was new or used, and any other relevant details. The mark didn't affect resale value at all since it was completely hidden, but it meant I could prove something was mine if I needed to. I didn't lend games out very often. Most people just came to my house to play what they wanted. When I did lend something out, I was very clear about the rules. 2 weeks maximum, and then I would start asking for it back. Simple enough. Around age 14, I started noticing games going missing more often than usual. Losing one game here or there wasn't shocking, but the frequency had changed. Something was wrong. So I set up a test. I bought a second notebook and wrote down the exact location of every single game I owned. If I moved a game, I would update the notebook. Within a few weeks, I found that my copy of Final Fantasy X had vanished from my PC drawer. That's when it hit me. One of my friends was stealing from me. The problem was how to catch them. If I started asking around about missing games, whoever was doing it would just stop and I would never figure out who it was. I needed a better plan. One advantage I had was that I was the go-to person on the street for gaming help. This was during the early days of the internet when most families either didn't have it at all or had dial-up that only one person could use at a time. Some people had those weird keyboards you could plug into your TV to browse the web through your cable box, but that was clunky and slow. Game guides online existed but weren't widely known about in our area. I kept it that way by being generous with tips and walkthroughs so nobody had reason to look elsewhere. The other advantage was geography. It took 15 minutes to get to our town center and 2 hours to reach the nearest city. The town had 2 shops that bought and sold used games, but neither of them was a major chain. Both had the same policy though. They would only accept a trade if you brought the box, the disc, and the manual. That gave me an idea. I spent an hour going through my entire collection and removing every single manual. I stored them all in a box that I shoved under the bottom shelf of my dresser. If someone was stealing from me and trying to trade my games in for cash, they were about to hit a wall. Next, I started gathering information. The 3 sets of siblings on my street were easy to rule out. The first pair, 2 sisters, had a mom who helped my grandmother and me clean my great-grandmother's house every Saturday. Whenever a missing game came up in conversation, I would casually ask when they started playing it. The mom would always mention she bought it for them or they picked it up in town on a shopping trip. They were innocent. The second pair got pretty much anything they asked for from their parents, within reason. No way they needed to steal games. Also innocent. The third set were brothers. The younger one couldn't keep a secret to save his life, and I was close enough with him that he would have let something slip by accident. I helped him with schoolwork, covered him when he was short on money for snacks, and made sure he had someone to talk to about stuff. His older brother I was friendly with but more cautious around. Still, if either of them had been playing something that went missing, I would have known about it. Innocent. That left 3 other boys on the street who I only knew individually, not as part of a tight group. If I had suspects, it would be one of them. For 2 years I kept up the act. I stayed helpful, stayed generous with game tips, and made sure nobody ever questioned where I got my information. Games kept disappearing, but I was watching for something specific. None of my suspects were suddenly showing up with extra cash or trading in a bunch of stuff at the shops in town. No manuals meant no trade-ins, which meant the games were still somewhere. I was waiting for one game to go missing, a platformer called Vex that was similar to Super Mario 64, except you collected hearts instead of stars. One of the hearts in the game had copy protection built in. You needed to look up a specific answer in the manual to progress. It was a common trick back before the internet made it pointless. Sure enough, about a month after I finished playing it, Vex disappeared. A week later, a boy my age who lived on my street asked me how to open a certain chest in one of the whale levels. I told him the answer was in the manual. He said he didn't have a manual because he bought the game at a car boot sale. I had him. His parents didn't travel much, so no city trips where he could have picked up games, and there hadn't been any car boot sales anywhere nearby in the last 4 months. He went to karate practice every Thursday night from 7 to 9. On the next Thursday, I waited until 7:10 and walked down to his house with my grandmother. I brought both notebooks, printouts of my purchase records, and a document my mom had helped me draft. When his parents answered the door, I explained what I suspected their son had been doing. They didn't believe me at first, which I expected. I asked if I could prove he was stealing. They agreed, probably thinking I wouldn't find anything. I walked straight to the copy of Vex sitting in their front room. I opened it up and showed them there was no manual inside. Then I showed them my notebook entry. Finally, I lifted the paper cover out of the case and revealed the pen mark I had made, holding it next to the identical mark recorded in my notebook. They both went pale. I asked if I could check the rest of the house for more games. The father nodded, still too shocked to speak. 20 minutes later, I had over 30 games piled on their table. Every single one was missing its manual. Every single one had a pen mark that matched my records. But what I found upstairs on his desk was even better. A handwritten note listing names and games. When I showed it to them, I could see the father's face turning red with anger, while my grandmother talked to the mother about potential legal issues and how their son was 16 now and could be tried as an adult with the right judge. I showed the father where I found the note. He started digging through drawers and found folders full of records, games owned by different people, dates he had acquired them, amounts he had traded them in for. It wasn't just me. He had been doing this for years, going back to the Sega Mega Drive era. He would steal games, play them until he was bored, then trade them in for cash and pocket the money. He had only started targeting me a few years ago when my grandmother let me move consoles downstairs so friends could play, long when it was only when I had people over and we kept things tidy. I went back downstairs and pulled out the document. My mom, grandmother, and I had worked on it together. It said that I wouldn't take the evidence to the police on the condition that every stolen game was returned to me or the original owner. If a game couldn't be returned, the thief's parents would pay back the full retail price I had paid within 6 months, so it could be given to whoever it was stolen from. My mom had been smart about the wording. She made sure it covered all victims, not just me. Both parents signed it. My grandmother signed it. I signed it. Then we waited. We used that time to discuss how we would handle the situation. We agreed that I would take the folders home and research retail prices for any games that couldn't be returned. When the thief got home from karate practice, he stared at the folders and the pile of games like he was seeing a ghost. I called my grandfather to help us carry everything back to my grandmother's house, and before we left, we explained exactly what was going to happen and what the results would be. His house was 4 doors down and across the street. The street was small with only one exit, and at the far end was a garden and a train line that ran through town. From 9 until 10 that night, I could hear his father screaming at him. Even when the 9:15 train rumbled past, I could still hear the yelling while I scanned all the records into my computer using a very basic scanner. It felt satisfying to go through everything and match up what had been stolen from each person. That weekend, I printed multiple copies of the agreement and made documents listing what had been stolen from each of my friends, how much it was worth, and when they could expect their money. I returned the folders to the thief's parents and gave them a copy of the agreement with the total value of everything stolen. They told me they would pay, and that the money would come out of his savings and allowance. For the next 4 years, we were both 16 at the time, which meant he would be in his first year of university before he finished paying his parents back. The karate lessons stopped immediately. After they closed the door, I pulled several envelopes out of my bag and went to each house on the street. Every kid got an envelope with the information relevant to them and a copy of the agreement. To my surprise, it only took 2 weeks for every penny to be delivered to my grandmother. Using my records, I gave each friend exactly what they were owed in an envelope. Once that was done, I waited until the following Monday and gave a copy of the agreement to my school. The school had a system where certain responsibilities were given to the most trustworthy and well-behaved students. Both of us had been on that list. He was removed immediately and the staff knew exactly why. On my street, he was cut off from the friend group. Nobody talked to him. He wasn't invited to anything. In school, he wasn't allowed on any of the remaining trips because his father refused to sign permission slips. After that, nothing changed for me. Sure, we were one friend down, but none of my games ever went missing again. At 18, I moved to my mom's place for college, and by then I had only spent the returned money on an Xbox 360. My mom keeps a framed copy of the signed agreement in her office, and I keep the original framed in mine. After high school finished, the thief and his parents moved away. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.